YouTube, what is going on? The Sports is Life podcast is back. Dog days of summer, not a whole lot of content out there. College football is really in a cool down mode right now. Still some nil battles going on out there, namely Miami versus Florida. Not getting into that today. Wanted to do a Charlotte Hornets video. Everything that's gone down over the last 2 months, from the firing of James Borrego to the long search for Kenny Atkinson, his unprofessional tale, to the hiring of Steve Clifford, from the draft to the free agency of Miles Bridges. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm one of those people that was none too sad to see James Borrego get fired as coach of the Charlotte Hornets. For me, the Charlotte Hornets had a top 6 seed type of team. They got into the play-in, and for the second year in a row, they got blown off the court. Last year, they got blown away by the Indiana Pacers, and this year, they got blown away by the Atlanta Falcons, which, in my opinion, I believe the team was better than both of those teams. So, in my opinion, James Borrego didn't get into the playoffs. He didn't play the rookies, James Bouknight, Kai Jones, JT Thor. So what's the point of having him as the coach? If you want to play the veterans, that's fine. You can play the vets all the way through. You just got to make the playoffs. He didn't make the playoffs, and he didn't play the rookies either. So the Charlotte Hornets come into this year not knowing what James Bouknight really is. If he would have played, you would have had a sense of, hey, we got to trade Gordon Hayward. You got to trade Terry Rozier. You can get off that money. James Bouknight can start. He can play opposite LaMelo Ball, and away you go. But since you don't have that type of clarity, you're left stuck. And that's what I feel like the Charlotte Hornets have been this whole offseason. They've been kind of hemming and hawing, being a fence sitter. They needed to make decisive moves, and it doesn't really look like it's gone down that way. So James Borrego gets fired. That's cool. They take 2 months. They interview a good amount of candidates. I wouldn't say that they interviewed everybody. I myself would have liked to see a Sam Cassell get a interview. I think that he would be a really good coach. But they interviewed the Terry Stottses, the Mike D'Antonis, the Kenny Atkinsons, some names that I had hinted in a earlier video about 2 months ago. So they finally find their guy, Kenny Atkinson, a assistant coach for the Golden State Warriors. He accepted the job. You know, they're in the NBA Finals. Golden State wins. You know, Charlotte is thinking, all right, you know, it's time to go. The draft is coming up in a couple of days. You've already reached out to the assistant coaches. You've already told them, hey, you know, we're going to set up some meetings. I'm going to fly out there. And then next thing you know, there's a Rose bomb. And Kenny Atkinson decides to back out. Well, we first heard that it was over family reasons. And then we kind of heard that there was bickering over what assistant coaches he would be able to bring with them, and what kind of money that the Hornets would allow him to use on the assistant coaches. So the look is that Jordan is cheap, the Charlotte Hornets is cheap, and they have been frugal throughout the years, but I don't blame this on Michael Jordan nor the Hornets. In my opinion, Kenny Atkinson is just unprofessional as hell. You don't do that type of thing. He went through the interview process. He interviewed 2 times with Mitch Kupchak and then 1 time with Michael Jordan. And you mean to tell me through those interviews, he didn't get any absolutes about what coaches he can bring with him, if he can fire the whole staff of previous coaches? He went through the interview process. He accepted the job, sat on it 8 to 10 days while he went through the process of coaching on Steve Kerr's staff for the Golden State Warriors. And then after the fact, he decides, because Mike Brown leaves and Kerr tells him that he can be the assistant to him, he decides to stay. And to me, that's just unprofessional. If you don't want the Charlotte Hornets job, that's fine. Don't interview for it. Just don't interview for it. Just sit back and say, no, I'm going to pick and choose. They're a bad team. Whatever you want to say. Don't interview. Don't go through the process. Don't interview 2-3 times. Go through the process. They offer you the job. You take the job, and then a week and a half later, you say that you're gonna back out because of family reasons. And up to this point, he has made not one comment. This is all leaks. So to me, Kenny Atkinson is unprofessional. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So after he backs out, then everyone's thinking, okay, so it's gonna be Terry Stotts, it's gonna be Mike D'Antoni. How do you go back to them after you chose someone else? So Terry Stotts, it looks like, did not get a second look. Mike D'Antoni met with Jordan, and whatever took place, Mike D'Antoni was not the pick, because a couple days later, Steve Clifford, boom, is coming back. My thoughts on Mike D'Antoni. Offensive coach, but I think when the Hornets came into this offseason and they fired James Borrego, it was because, one, he didn't make the playoffs. Two, because he didn't make the playoffs, okay, where are we at with the rookies? He didn't play any of the rookies. And three, the defense was horrible as hell. The defense was god awful the entire year, and I don't want to hear anything about Gordon Hayward getting hurt, because he's been hurt in back-to-back years. You've got the roster. You've got LaMelo Ball. You've got Miles Bridges, who took a huge leap. You got Terry Rozier. You have the roster. Yes, you don't have a defensive center, but you got LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier, and PJ Washington. I think that was a good enough roster to be a 6 or 7 seed. They ended up making the play-in, which we talked about earlier, and they just got blown out. They were not competitive. And for me, I didn't think James Borrego was the person going for it. Mike D'Antoni, he's a great offensive coach. Everyone knows that. But he's 71 years old. How much longer is he going to coach this team? We don't know that. So he unlocks LaMelo Ball for 1 or 2 years, and then his time coaching is over. I think we needed a younger coach. We needed a coach that leaned on the defensive end. Mike D'Antoni, I just think, wasn't a good choice in the end. Offensively, he would have been good for this team, but what was going to happen 3 years down the road? Is Charlotte going to be looking for another coach? So I just think Mike D'Antoni just wasn't the pick. Now, as far as Terry Stotts was a decent offensive coach for Portland Trailblazers. He made the playoffs a good amount of times, but Terry Stotts is not no big glamorous guy. I mean, the defense with him was poor as well. So what Charlotte has lacked in the last 2 years is a defensive component. And I understand that Steve Clifford had not made the final list, the final 3, before Kenny backed out. And that's the big thing down in Charlotte. The big thing is that Steve Clifford, he used to coach, and why are you going backwards? I think when you take a step back, if you just remove the name Steve Clifford, you would see that he's a damn good coach. He actually took the Hornets to 2 playoffs in 5 years. He went to the Magic and took them to the playoff 2 years in a row before having a bad season, and then they let him go. So I think if you just take away the name, you just look at his resume, a fine defensive coach, has gotten 2 small market franchises, the Hornets and the Magic, into the playoffs a total of 4 times, 2 apiece. I think in the end, it could be a good hire for Steve Clifford. Now, obviously, he's going to have to bond with LaMelo Ball. That's going to be the first thing. He's going to have to bond with Ball. He's got to make sure that they're on the same page. And another thing is he can't slow the pace down. The offensive pace has to remain the same, which is something that in his statement and his press release, Mitch Kupchak made sure to put that out there, that Steve Clifford is committed to playing with the same pace that the Charlotte Hornets has played with over the last 2 years, because the Charlotte Hornets has been a fun team to watch on the offensive side of the ball. Alley-oops to Miles Bridges, a lot of threes. They've been really fun to watch, but the defense has been god-awful. So that's what Clifford is here to do. He's here to make the defense a whole lot better, and I think it has a real chance to work out. We'll see what happens. NBA draft. I was a little bit disappointed with other Charlotte Hornets fans as well. Charlotte came into the draft with the 13th and the 15th pick. Duren dropped in the draft. He was selected 13, and then before you knew it, Charlotte was trading that pick. They did get Mark Williams at 15, which he is the better fit, but in my opinion, I think you use this particular draft to stockpile talent, to keep bringing in talent. You can keep both big men if you need it and let Plumlee go instead of bringing him back for $8 million. In my opinion, I would have liked to see them hang on to both picks. Then you have Duren, Williams, Kai Jones, and you just try to develop all three of them. But they didn't do that. I know the reason why. You know, obviously they're trying to save money. They got Miles Bridges coming up, and basically they just kicked the can down the road. They traded the pick to the Knicks, who traded it to the Pistons, and they ended up getting Denver's pick next year, which is surely going to be in the 20s. So it's going to be a worse pick. They did get 4 second-round picks. 1 they used in the second round this year, so they'll have 3 going forward. So they just kicked the can down the road, which, in my opinion, I think they should have kept a hold of Duren, but maybe there was some play like, hey, Pistons, we know you're going to get Duren here once we trade it to the Knicks, and do us a solid and don't sign Miles Bridges to a max contract. Could it be something like that going on? Probably not. That would be collusion. That would definitely be a lawsuit. But, you know, maybe, you know, that's possible. Anything can happen. Free agency. As it approaches, I think that there is no chance that the Hornets is going to let Miles Bridges go. No chance. They haven't offered him a max, because why should they? Why should they bet against themselves? Why should they bargain against themselves? If no one is going to offer Miles Bridges a max contract, then why should them? Now, they don't have to lowball him, because that just breeds discontent. But they can offer him 27, 28, 29 million a year instead of offering him a max deal, which is 30 million plus. Miles Bridges is not a max player, but he's a very, very good player, and he's on the way up. So if he continues to get better, he can definitely be a max player. So I think either way, if someone offers Miles Bridges the max, Charlotte Hornets is going to match it. So I don't believe he's going anywhere. So Charlotte Hornets fans, you can just relax. Miles Bridges isn't going anywhere. And I believe in the end, even though it took a crazy way to get to the coach, I think that Steve Clifford could end up being a good hire. In the end, all that matters is the results. If Charlotte is a top 6 seed next year and they're in the playoffs, I look at it as a win, because James Borrego didn't get you there. And in my opinion, he was never going to get the Hornets there. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Drop a line, drop some comments to me. Tell me what you think about the Charlotte Hornets offseason. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everyone that's been watching my videos. Going to try to get some more content in here. Some college football content going. Maybe some baseball content. Tell me what you think about the video. Tell me what you think about Charlotte Hornets. And we'll talk again. I'm out.